Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Success is a Choice Podcasting Network. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and we will get right to our guest in just a moment for our Leaders Growing Leaders series here. But first, I want to remind you that this episode is made possible by the leadershipplaybook.com, the leadershipplaybook.com. Everybody wants a stronger, more healthy culture, and one of the best ways to do that is have better teammates and more positive leaders. So check out the leadershipplaybook.com. Well, our series here, Leaders Growing Leaders, is all about talking to people that are in administrative roles, managerial roles, supervisory roles. In other words, leaders, but those people that maybe know the X's and O's or know how to dot the I's and cross the T's, but they realize that that's only a starting point. That leadership, dealing with people, interacting with people, how you inspire others, how you help motivate others and make others better is just as important. And today's guest is Josh Mathews. He's at Pope High School down in Georgia. He was also the 2024 Leadership Playbook Administrator of the Year. So Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for having me today. Also, thank you for that award, the recognition. Really appreciate that and very humbled by that honor. So we really appreciate you and what you're doing for athletics and athletic administrators.
Well, I appreciate it. You're on the front lines. You know, we just consult, we write books, we try to help people, but at the end of the day, we get to go home and sleep in our bed and not have to worry about so many things. But you're on the front lines every day working with coaches and student athletes. But you also have a podcast, Hangin with the AD podcast, which is one of the best out there for high school ADs. How did that get started?
Yes, sir. So Don Baker is our district athletic director here in Cobb County Schools, and but at the end of 2019, he and I just started brainstorming just different ways that we could connect. And one of the things we talked about were hot button topics, reclassification, things like that in high school athletic administration, and how we could get that information out, because our state association will have meetings, and if you attend, you hear it, but if you don't, it's not covered in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, right? So how do we get that out? And he's like, man, I've been thinking about a podcast. And so we talked through it. Then we connected with a friend of ours, kind of our podcast mentor, Mike Lynch, in this area. And Mike talked about how he does his, excuse me. And we turned it into more of a conversation podcast where we talk to athletic leaders to let them talk about the experiences, their lessons learned in high school or middle school or even collegiate athletics, kind of their world of athletics. So that's how it started. We were starting right at the beginning of 2020, and then COVID hit and everybody had a lot of free time, and we got a lot of traction and a lot of people said yes. And since then we've had a lot more people say yes and be available. And we are just so grateful for everyone who's been on our podcast and everyone who said yes, and the ones who will in the future, hopefully.
Well, it's a great professional development tool for athletic directors, because there's not a lot out there. There's a few out there, but being an athletic director or a leader in general, sometimes you can feel like you're on an island. And oftentimes, though, we all have the same problems, the same issues, and we can kind of join forces and share resources and share ideas and thoughts. And that's what you've been able to do is provide that as a tool for a lot of ADs.
Excuse me again. Yes, sir. I mean, we say every time we talk to someone, if no one listens, we got better, because it's amazing the wisdom and the just content that people have shared that we have connected with, and they made us better. And from the feedback we got, we think others are getting better as well. And that's our hope. We really enjoy doing it. And there are other podcasts out there. There were just a couple in our space when COVID hit. And then since then, there's been several more pop up that are really, really good that I have in my podcast list that I listen to often. And yeah, I mean, just everybody making others better has really benefited this interscholastic athletic space, even though we kind of merge it with the collegiate space as well.
So what are some things that you do? You know, you mentioned your podcast list yourself, the podcast, the shows, the episodes that you listen to. Are there some things that you do from a professional development standpoint or to grow and improve so that you're filled up, your tank is filled so that you can then give and pour out to others?
Absolutely. I was blessed when I became an athletic director in 2012. I worked with a principal, Dr. Bob Downs, and he highlighted and elevated professional development for our students, for our teachers, you know, professionally, and for myself. And at that time, I didn't know anything about the NIAAA, didn't know anything about the NADC. And I'd been in the baseball world where we went to conferences a lot. And so I said, I wonder if there's an AD conference. I found it, and he said, absolutely, go to it. And it was really career changing because it made me understand the importance of getting away in the middle of the year, which is December, and getting away to get better. So every year we go to the NADC, and then we have a state conference. Georgia State Conference is in March. There are state conferences all over the country. I've learned about now that I've gotten involved with NIAAA a little bit more, and every state has a conference where you can go locally and get better. So those are a couple ways that I try to improve myself professionally. I would tell you, I like to read. I feel like I read a lot, but I don't read a lot compared to some folks. I read a lot for me, right? So everybody's speed and content and how much they read is your own. So I like to read leadership and biography stuff to learn from other people. And then, like you said, podcast. I've gotten to where I get in a walking routine or a driving, you know, when I'm driving somewhere like I will tomorrow to the state cross country meet, I'm going to throw on some kind of leadership podcast and listen to it as well.
So there, you know, people are tending not to read books as much anymore, but we still have a number of people in our audience that still like to read books. What are some of your suggestions? What are some of your go-tos or the books that maybe you give away as gifts more than others, or just the things that come to mind that you think are, man, this is a book that I think people should read?
Yeah. So I pulled one off my shelf over here to my right. You can't see it. I have my stack of my favorites. So I pulled off this. Mark Miller is one of my favorite guys. He's a local Atlanta guy, Chick-fil-A guy. Chestnut Checkers is my absolute favorite leadership book. It changed how I do leadership. When I first became an AD, we would have AD meeting or coaches meeting, excuse me, and you do the nuts and bolts and spend 2 hours doing nuts and bolts and send them on their way. And all you gave them was a bunch of junk, is what I call it. You have to give them that, right? It's nuts and bolts. You have to do that, and you have to refresh on it every year. But this book, Chestnut Checkers, helped me learn how to play a new game, or at least prompt me to try to play a different game. Checkers, very reactionary, very basic. Chess, you gotta see around the corner, right? You gotta be visionary. You gotta see things before they happen. And as an athletic leader, that's my goal, is to see around the corner, to see things first, and to try to get us on the front edge of new things that can make us better and improve us. So that book changed how I live and how I try to lead. I'll tell you, Brett Ledbetter is a great content guy. What Drives Winning platform, man, his stuff. I just got his new book, 365 Questions. It's not necessarily a book you're going to read through like a normal book, but it gives you great questions. But his original books, I've got 2 of them in that stack. Let me see, Patrick Lencioni. Got some Mark Batterson from the religious standpoint, In a Pit on a Snowy Day with a Lion. Mm-hmm. Really, really good read. about having courage. And then there's one little one that I think it's a secret book. A guy named Mark DeMoss, he was a consultant, and it's called The Little Red Book of Wisdom. And it's kind of a chapter. You can read a chapter at a time. It's kind of a mini chapter devotional, but it's phenomenal. It talks about a turtle on a fence post. How did that turtle get there? Didn't get there by itself. We can't get anywhere by ourselves, right? Talked about reading a proverb a day. There's 30 proverbs, 31 days in a month, that kind of stuff. So that little book, The Little Red Book of Wisdom, is kind of a secret gem of mine, I think. Chestnut Checkers, Head and Shoulders. It's up there. Oh, there's another one I just read with our pastor a couple of years ago, Canoeing the Mountains. It's Todd Bolsinger, and it talks about how we have to change how we lead. It's about church leadership, but it applies to what we do. And he parallels the Lewis and Clark expedition. And I'm not a history expert with Lewis and Clark, so I don't need to get in that too deep. But what I do know from reading this book and the history of it, right? They canoed up the river to get to the Pacific Ocean. Well, when they got to the mouth of the start of the river, they went to the ridge and they realized that's not the Pacific Ocean, that's the Rocky Mountains. And you can't canoe the Rocky Mountains, right? So they had to change their method, their mind. They could have turned around and went back and said, we can't do it. But we know for history that they kept going and they didn't use a canoe to get there. So how do we change our methods and our strategies and our leadership to attack new issues and new challenges?
Well, we'll put those books in the show notes, or you can just rewind, a minute or two and write them down. But those are some good book suggestions. Appreciate
Hopefully
that.
That wasn't too much. I don't know. I look at my stack and I get a little passionate.
Well, if somebody doesn't like reading, that was a wasted 2 minutes for them. But for most people that are watching this, they value professional development. So they probably were interested in some of those books as well. But we'll put those in the show notes. But you mentioned, the Rocky Mountain type thing and changing up your strategy or having to make adjustments. As an AD, you have to adapt and adjust constantly. You have to pivot sometimes for the better. You if you're stubborn, then you might fall behind a little bit. Give us a time or two where you've had to adjust or pivot your way of thinking or things that you've done. And it might even been just a mistake that you made. You wish you had done something different and you learned from that, but some ways maybe you've pivoted, adjusted, adapted as an AD.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you, I mean, every AD listening knows this, and I've got a great office set up here. I'm very, very blessed at Pope High School, but every time a different coach walks in that door, you gotta adjust, you gotta pivot because that challenge is different. That coach's personality is different. That issue they're bringing to you, it may be a celebration, right? But the one before it wasn't. So you gotta be agile. I heard that word the other day. I really like it. I think that's a word that probably elite people use. I probably need to work it in my vocabulary and try to get better. But you got to be agile, right? And I would say this kind of just popped up the other day in a conversation, not to be very, very specific on a mistake, but just a leadership mentality. I probably attacked this role and challenges for the longest time of thinking I had it all figured out and then having the conversation. And what I think I've learned that I need to do better, and I'm working on currently, just applied it this week in a couple parent conversations and coaching conversations, is ask questions, ask for perspective. Hey, how did this go? And in the back of my mind, I've had someone tell me their side of it, and probably somebody that I trust, and I probably know that's the way it went. But instead of just saying, this is how it went, this is you were wrong, this is what I need you to do, instead of doing that, turn around and ask that person, what is your perspective of this? What happened there? How did you see it? And, how did this go? Why did this happen? Ask those questions to get their perspective. And you probably, I the other day, I was able to deliver the point that I needed to make that, hey, you might've been wrong. I was able to deliver that a little softer, and they heard it a little better because I allowed them to give their perspective first.
Yeah, that's so important. And in the book, talking about books, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of his habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood. But
That's
most
good.
of us just want someone else to understand us, and we don't
Right.
understand the situation or see or even entertain the possibility that there's different perspectives and different
Right.
points of view of something. But yeah, that's a great one itself. So you mentioned parent conversations. There's an AD or two or a coach or two that's listening to this right now that's probably had a parent issue at some point in their career. Is there some
Only
advice?
only the ones who started today have not.
That's right. That's right. Only the day one rookies.
That's right. And they'll be
But
ready. It'll happen tomorrow.
probably. Are there some insights, tips you would give, maybe not just with parents, but just challenging personalities, challenging individuals, challenging situations? Hopefully it's not you and your boss, but oftentimes it's us and parents is the most common one. But any insights you would give us in handling or working with challenging people?
Hmm. That's a $1 million question, right? If you can answer that, you can quit sitting behind the desk and go speak and make a lot of money doing that. I think. Yeah, it's great. My first direction here is to talk about our people, and I've been blessed to be at Poe for 13 years. Yeah, we have challenging parents sometimes. We have challenging staff members. They're challenging situations, right? We talk a lot about those. We hear in the community, hey, man, are those parents just crazy? How do you deal with those parents or how do you deal with those people? And it's easy. It's an easy conversation to start. But in a place like Pope, I mean, probably a lot of places we highlight those, but they're really very minimal compared to the parent conversations that are really, really healthy and really satisfying and uplifting. I keep in my drawer back there. My mom took them all and made me some notebooks of, I call it smile folder, right? Anytime you get a note or now it's an email and it sounds very selfish, but I think it's important. Print that email off, put it somewhere where you can save it. And when you retire, whenever you can look back and see all the times that you got a smile note. You were given a smile, right? That Tall Grop is our NIAAA president this year from Boise, and his theme is smile. And anytime you can make yourself or find something to make yourself smile, it's just going to reinforce the why of why we do this. So I didn't answer your question about tips. I don't know if I have good answers or different answers. I think most people would say attack the problem as soon as you can. I say pray about it, sit on it, sleep on it, pray about it. So, I will say I've sat on it too long and it just chews at me, right? I think having mentors or coaches, especially ones outside of your school who you can call and talk to, some people call it venting. I think that's my way of making gossip excusable. But if you have those coaches or mentors, and I've got a list, they're in red back there, or excuse me, black behind me. I don't know if you can read them, but there's about 10 or 12 names on that list. They're right there. Those are my go-to. Those are my board of directors. So I know I can pick up the phone and call them and say, here's my situation. And it can be about somebody here, whether it's a staff member or a student or a parent, and some of those people aren't going to know them, right? So I can explain the situation and get good feedback and get good coaching. So that would be the two things. I don't sit on it and have a board of directors, have mentors. But I'm going to tell you, focus on the good. Don't let people drag you down into that 1% or 5% of conversations you have to have to be a leader. I mean, you're not going to be a leader if you don't have difficult conversations. So you kind of get what you ask for. Don Baker, who we mentioned earlier, he says the dream is the journey. I asked to sit in this seat. And so I gotta be almost excited when situations like that come to me, because that means I'm getting to do the role I asked to do. Right. So it's not fun, but it's a part of the fun. So hopefully that answered your question. And I know that was long winded, so I apologize for that.
No, that's good. That's what we tuned in for. We tuned in to listen to experts, not to me. We tuned in to listen
Well,
to
they'll
people
tune
that are
in
doing
next week for the expert, I guess. So,
it. Well, so as an AD, as a leader, sometimes you're coaching coaches, you're leading leaders so that they can have a bigger impact on student athletes. Because ultimately that's what we're in it for. We're in it to help them become better people in society, better community members, educators, leaders, husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, that kind of stuff. Are there things that you're doing intentionally at Pope to help your coaches be better, to help your leaders be better so that your student athletes can be better?
yeah, I think that's a really good question. I go back to the Chestnut Checkers book. I'll hold it up again in case people are watching on your YouTube channel. That book changed how I did meetings, as I said, changed how I want to lead. And we have to have meetings in today's world, in the modern day of leadership, and all the depth of things that coaches have to do in our athletic programs encompass, right? But I changed when I read this book, and I've read it twice now, and I changed how I want meetings to look as far as what the content is. We're going to do the junk, as I call it. It's important junk, but it's still junk, right? And we're going to try to give them some good stuff, some substance. I'm never going to have a meeting where we don't offer some kind of inspirational substance, some kind of challenge, some kind of new thought on how to lead as a coach. This year we are looking at the Blue Angels. I watched the Blue Angel special this past summer that came out, which is phenomenal. And they talk about flying those airplanes 18 inches apart.
Yeah.
And I've talked to our coaches and tried to show them different things to help us as a program, help them as their individual programs grow 18 inches apart, right? Work, operate 18 inches apart. How can we be collaborative and be cohesive, those kind of things. So I am, and our coaches may get tired of it, but we are always going to have a piece, a component, whether it's a quote, a podcast. You have a great platform in the Leadership Playbook with 2-minute videos. It's 2 minutes. I mean, it's not 10, it's not 5, it's 2 minutes. And you don't even have to make the content, just click the button, right? So, Jamie, I highlight your stuff. I know, you that was the sponsor of this show, and you can help people find that. But if you want stuff for your coaches and for your athletes, there it is right there. I'll also tell you, a few years ago, we worked on developing our mission statement for our athletic program, our core values. This year we got coins. Actually, our coaches haven't seen these yet. They're going to get them in January. So on the back of this coin, it has our core values and mission statements. We go back to that every month, every meeting. And it just, hey, this is who we are. This is how we want to, this is what we're about, our mission. And this is how we want to do it, our values. So those are some of the things that I think we do. Coaches coaching coaches, that's an easy one. Give a coach 10 minutes during your meetings or whenever, and let them just tell them the way we started it was, hey, coach, share with the rest of the head coaches something you're doing that you think is innovative or different in your program this year. Sit back and let them go, because coaches can coach, and let them, they don't want to coach their peers, and they'll fight you a little bit on it, but just get the one that will, and then the next month get the next one that will, so that worked really well. We were doing that going into COVID, and we've done a little bit of that since, but those are really good because it helps your coaches coach adults, but it also helps them evaluate what they're doing as well.
Yeah, that's a good collaborative idea as well. But, coaches will go to clinics all the time or try to go for professional development and listen to other coaches. Sometimes you have some great coaching clinics. You could have it in the hallways of your athletic department, or just even going into a practice of, if you're a soccer coach going and watching a volleyball practice, so to speak, maybe they can learn something. But I love the idea of in your coaches meeting, having coaches talk about different things and being collaborative like that. Awesome stuff there. Well, he's Josh Mathews. Definitely follow him on Twitter. You can follow him, JW Mathews with 1 T, JW Mathews 14 on Twitter, Pope Athletics on Twitter, and then Hangin with the AD, Hangin with the AD on Twitter as well. But Josh Mathews, we appreciate you joining us. Everybody watching this, thank you for watching this, listening to this. Feel free to share this, especially with an AD friend. Almost all of you have ADs, college or high school or middle school. Share this with them. There's a number of key insights that Josh provides. So thank you so much for everybody joining us. And until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?